She texts the CEO boss by mistake. Hours later, the hospital called him about a baby. Welcome, family. If this is your first time here, know this. You didn't stumble upon this channel by accident. You were led here for comfort, for healing, for a reminder that it's never too late to be seen, to be chosen, or to be loved again. To all my beautiful viewers out there, may today bring you peace in your body, calm in your mind, and warmth in your heart. And if no one has told you lately, you matter. You are not alone. You are part of this growing family here at Mr Hearthline Stories. Before we begin, I'm asking you from the heart, tap that like button if you believe stories still carry healing. Leave a comment, tell me where you're watching from, or just say I'm here. Subscribe so you never miss a moment that might just speak to what you're going through. Let's begin the story. Jessica Mendez gripped the edge of the hospital bed, her knuckles white as another contraction ripped through her body. Sweat beaded along her temples and her breaths came sharp and uneven. The fluorescent lights above made everything feel harsher, colder, less forgiving. She had never felt more alone. Her phone was clutched in her trembling hand. She scrolled past dozens of unanswered messages she had once sent to the baby's father, Daniel. He hadn't returned a single one. He wasn't coming. She needed someone. Anyone. Her sister usually answered in seconds. With blurry eyes, Jessica typed, "It's happening. I can't do this alone. Please come." Her thumb slipped on the screen as another contraction seized her body. She hit send without checking the name at the top of the thread. Seconds later, the message pinged, delivered. Jessica dropped the phone onto the sheets and leaned back, panting, her body tightening again. Nurses moved quickly around her, adjusting monitors, prepping the room. She didn't realize the mistake she had just made. Across the city, in a glass-paneled office that overlooked the skyline, Michael Torrance rubbed at his temples. It had been another endless day of back-to-back meetings, numbers flashing, across screens, and a board that always wanted more from him. His phone buzzed. He glanced down, expecting another calendar reminder or a quick note from his driver. Instead, he saw the message. "It's happening. I can't do this alone. Please come." Michael frowned. The text was from his assistant, Jessica. He read it twice, the words hitting deeper with each pass. His first thought was confusion. His second was instinct. He grabbed his jacket, shoved his phone into his pocket, and left the office without a word. Back at the hospital, Jessica was in tears. She had just realized her mistake. When she picked up the phone to see if her sister had responded, she froze. The name above the message thread wasn't her sister's. It was Michael Torrance, her boss, the CEO of the entire company. Jessica's stomach knotted, mortification mixed with the searing pain of contractions. Of all people to beg for help, she had texted him. She shoved the phone under the blanket, as if hiding it could erase what had already happened. "Oh God," she whispered, pressing her face into her hands. "What have I done?" But it was too late. Because minutes later, when another contraction made her cry out, the door opened, and there he was, Michael Torrance. Tall, composed, his suit jacket still on, but his expression softened in a way she had never seen before. His eyes scanned the room, then locked on her. "Jessica," he said quietly, almost unsure if he was intruding. Her breath caught, not from the contraction this time, from sheer shock. What are you doing here?" She managed to gasp. "You texted me." Michael replied simply. He stepped closer, ignoring the odd looks from the nurses. "You said you couldn't do this alone." Jessica shook her head frantically, heat rushing to her face. "No, I didn't mean. I wasn't trying to." Another contraction cut her off, her body arching against the bed. A strangled cry left her throat. Michael moved before he could second-guess himself. He was at her side, one hand braced against the rail of the bed, the other gently hovering near hers. "Breathe with me," he said firmly, his voice low and steady. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. I've got you." Jessica clutched his hand without thinking, her nails digging into his skin. She squeezed as though he was the only thing anchoring her. And, to her surprise, he didn't pull away. For the next hour, he stayed. He counted through her contractions, fetched ice chips, and kept her focused when she felt like she would pass out. His expensive watch caught the light each time he adjusted the blanket over her legs, a surreal reminder that this was the man who usually sat in a boardroom, not at a hospital bedside. Jessica was overwhelmed by pain, by humiliation, by the sheer strangeness of the situation, but in her heart, a flicker of something new burned. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. The hospital room had quieted. The shrill rhythm of the monitors still beeped steadily, but the intensity of the moment had dulled, just enough for Jessica to think. Michael sat in a corner chair now, his jacket draped across his lap, tie loosened. His eyes hadn't left her in almost 30 minutes. Jessica had delivered a baby, and her boss, the Michael Torrance, had been the only one by her side. She glanced at him cautiously, cheeks still flushed from pain and embarrassment. "You didn't have to stay," she whispered. Michael looked up. His gaze was calm. "I didn't want you to be alone." The words sank deep, not because they were romantic, not yet, but because they were true. Outside the glass panel door, 2 nurses whispered by the hallway desk. "Is that her boyfriend?" one asked. "No way. That's Michael Torrance. I've seen him on business news. Why would he be here for her?" The other nurse shrugged. "Well, he hasn't left." Inside the room, Jessica curled slightly on her side, the baby swaddled in her arms. Her daughter, tiny, soft-skinned and warm, slept quietly against her chest. "I'll go," Michael said after a pause. "I know this is a lot." Jessica bit her lip. She wanted to tell him it was okay, that she understood, that he had a company to run and boardrooms waiting. But before she could find the words, he was already standing. He walked to the door, paused, turned back. "Do you have anyone coming?" She hesitated. "No," Michael nodded. He looked at her, not the way a CEO looks at an employee, but the way a man looks at someone who just survived something profound. "I'll come back tomorrow," he said softly. "Let me know if you need anything." And then he was gone. The next morning, Jessica woke to a knock on the door. She groaned, shifting carefully as not to disturb the baby. The door opened. Michael stepped in, but he wasn't in a suit. He wore a soft grey pullover and dark jeans. He carried a tray from a nearby cafe, eggs, fruit, coffee, and a paper bag with something warm inside. "I wasn't sure what you'd be able to eat," he said, setting it down beside her. "But it's all fresh, and the coffee's not hospital grade." Jessica blinked, half in disbelief. He noticed her expression. "Too much?" "No. I just didn't expect you to come back." Michael gave her a half smile. "You didn't text me again, if that's what you mean." She laughed for the first time since going into labor. "I double-checked this time." They sat quietly while she ate. The baby stirred, fussed, then calmed when Jessica gently rocked her. Michael leaned forward, watching with quiet fascination. "What's her name?" he asked. Jessica hesitated. "I haven't decided yet." Michael nodded. "She looks strong." Jessica raised an eyebrow. "You think so? She barely weighs 6 pounds." Michael looked directly at her. She just came into the world with no warning and still managed to sleep through her first morning. "That's strength." Jessica smiled. The compliment felt real, not just about the baby, but about her too. Later, a nurse entered to check vitals. "Dad can wait outside," she said, gesturing toward Michael. "Oh, he's not the dad," Jessica blurted quickly. He's my boss." The nurse blinked, embarrassed. "Oh, I'm sorry. I just assumed." Michael stood slowly. "I'll give you some privacy." Jessica watched him go, heart thudding a little harder than it should. She knew it was impossible, unthinkable, but the way he looked at her baby, the way he spoke to her, there was something growing, and it wasn't just gratitude. Later that evening, she received a message. "Let me know if you need help with anything before discharge. I mean it. I'm just down the road. Michael." Jessica stared at the text for a long time. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then she replied, "Thank you. I don't know why you care, but thank you." because no one should have to go through this alone. Jessica placed the phone down, closed her eyes, and held her daughter close. Something in her life had just shifted, and she didn't even know his middle name yet. Jessica was discharged 3 days later. The hospital wanted her to wait longer, but she couldn't afford it. Even with insurance, the extra nights were piling up charges she hadn't planned for. She walked slowly, baby carrier in one hand, overnight bag in the other. Her steps were stiff, her body still aching in ways she hadn't expected. Outside the hospital doors, the sunlight hit her too hard. She squinted, trying to find a cab. Then saw him, Michael, standing beside a sleek black SUV, sleeves rolled up, leaning casually against the passenger side door. He stepped forward without a word, taking the bag from her hand like it was instinct. "I figured you'd try to leave quietly." Jessica blinked. "You're really here. You thought I was bluffing? I thought you'd move on, get back to your life, your meetings, your actual responsibilities." Michael opened the door. "You are my responsibility right now. Get in." The car ride was quiet at first. Jessica watched her daughter sleep in the carrier between them. Michael drove like someone who had nowhere to be, not checking his phone, not hurrying lights. He asked nothing of her, but the silence between them wasn't awkward. It was steady, comforting. Finally, she spoke. "Why do you care, Michael?" His fingers gripped the wheel just slightly. "I don't know." Jessica raised an eyebrow. He sighed. "That's not true." "I do know." He glanced at her, then back to the road. 4 years ago I was married. We were expecting." Jessica's heart paused. Michael continued, voice low. "She was 6 months in when we lost the baby, and everything unraveled after that. The grief got in between us. She left." Jessica swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." He nodded once. "I never got to see him, never held him, and I've avoided anything that even reminded me of it, until I got your text." Jessica looked down at her baby, a lump forming in her throat. "I didn't know what I was doing," she admitted. "I thought I was texting my sister." Michael smiled faintly. "Maybe you were texting the right person." At her apartment building, he insisted on walking her inside. Jessica's place was modest, a small third-floor walk-up with creaky stairs, peeling paint, and a drafty window in the living room. Michael took it all in without judgment. He gently set the bag down, then turned toward the kitchen. "Anything you need?" Jessica blinked. "You don't have to stay, I know," he said calmly. "But if I leave now, you'll try to lift something you shouldn't, skip a meal, and forget to sleep. So, I'm staying for a bit." She looked at him for a long moment. Not as a boss, not as a man out of her league, but as someone who was simply present. "Okay," she said quietly. "You can stay. Just for a while." Michael took the crying baby in his arms when Jessica's hands were too tired to lift her. He heated a bottle when she couldn't get the breastfeeding latch to work. He even figured out how to fold her collapsing stroller, though not without a few muttered curses. That night, as Jessica lay on the couch with a warm blanket over her legs, she watched him wash out a bottle at her tiny sink. He looked strange there, too polished, too elegant for the chipped countertops and low cabinets. And yet, he fit. He turned slightly and caught her watching. "You should be sleeping." "I should," she said softly, "but I'm scared to close my eyes." Michael dried his hands and walked over. He sat across from her. "Why?" Jessica hesitated. "Then because when I wake up, I'm afraid you'll be gone. And this will all feel like a dream." Michael leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I'm not going anywhere. Not tonight." Jessica's breath hitched. "Why?" she whispered. Michael's voice was quiet, steady. "Because someone should have been there for me when I needed it, and now I get to be that for you. Maybe that's not a mistake after all." By the second night at home, Jessica was running on fumes. Her daughter, still unnamed, refused to sleep for longer than an hour. The apartment, though dim and quiet, felt overwhelming with the constant hum of needs, bottles to warm, diapers to change, and a body still healing. Jessica shuffled into the kitchen barefoot, her tank top stained with milk, eyes half shut. She barely noticed the man standing by the stove. Michael was already there, grinding fresh coffee, sleeves rolled back, hair slightly tousled like he'd been up all night too. "You should be asleep," she murmured. He turned. "So should you." Jessica leaned against the fridge, exhausted. She finally stopped crying. Michael poured her a mug. "I figured you'd be up again soon. The coffee's light, no sugar yet." She took it with both hands. "You're still here?" He looked at her. "I said I would be." That morning, the baby began to fuss again. Jessica reached down to lift her but winced mid-motion. Michael moved before she could speak. "Sit, I've got her." He cradled the infant with unexpected ease, bouncing gently as he walked toward the couch. Jessica stared, unable to hide her surprise. "You do that like a man who's done it before." He shrugged. "I watched a lot of videos last night." Jessica smiled weakly. "You studied?" "I don't like being useless." There was something undeniably intimate about the scene. Him in her living room, holding her baby with care, pacing the floor with slow, rhythmic steps. Jessica felt a tear slide down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away. Later, as the baby napped in the bassinet, Jessica tried to stand and failed. Her legs buckled. Michael caught her with both arms. "You're pushing too hard," he said, lowering her onto the couch. Jessica exhaled shakily. "I don't have a choice. There's no one else to do it." "There is now," he said simply. Jessica looked at him. "Why are you doing this?" Michael didn't answer right away. He took a breath. Then, "Because I've never regretted showing up for someone who needed me. But I've regretted every time I didn't." The afternoon sun filtered through the thin curtains. The baby stirred, then let out a long, gasping cry. Jessica tried to sit up, but her blouse had ridden up while she rested. She adjusted it quickly, trying to get to her feet. Michael knelt beside her. "Let me." He gently reached for the baby, who had gone red in the face, and rocked her again. Jessica tugged her shirt into place, embarrassed. But Michael didn't look away in discomfort or disgust. He glanced at her, met her eyes, and said quietly, "You don't have to hide from me." Jessica swallowed. "I don't feel like myself anymore." He reached forward and smoothed a wrinkle on her shoulder. "That's because you've become something more." That night, while Jessica showered for the first time in 2 days, Michael cleaned the small kitchen and set out fresh towels in the baby's corner. He found one of her notepads on the counter. Scribbled names filled the page. Baby names. He paused, then smiled to himself. When Jessica came out, hair wrapped in a towel, she saw her daughter asleep in his arms. And Michael, half asleep himself, but still gently patting her back, looked up at Jessica like he'd just found something he never knew he'd lost. The rain came suddenly, soft at first, then loud against the windows like it had been waiting all week to fall. Jessica sat on the couch, her baby sleeping against her chest in a sling. Across the room, Michael stood at the window, watching water streak down the glass like it had something to say. She broke the silence. "I haven't named her yet." Michael turned. "Why not?" Jessica hesitated. "I think naming her makes it real. Like everything before her life gets erased, and everything after becomes mine to carry alone." He walked over and sat beside her. Not too close, but close enough. "You don't have to carry it alone." Jessica looked down at her daughter. Her lips trembled. Her dad walked away the second he found out. He didn't ask how I was. He just disappeared. I haven't heard from him in months. Michael was quiet, then said, "Some men leave when it gets hard. Others don't know how to show up." She laughed, bitter. "Is there a difference?" Michael glanced at the baby. "I think there is. One leaves because he chooses himself. The other stays quiet because he thinks he's not enough. Either way, they both fail. But one still hopes to make it right." Jessica studied him. "Is that what happened with you?" He didn't answer right away. The rain filled the silence. "I wasn't perfect either," he admitted. "When my wife lost the baby, I shut down. I didn't know how to carry her pain. I just kept working, kept building things. But nothing I built ever brought her back." Jessica's voice was gentle. You weren't the one who left, though. Michael looked down. Sometimes silence leaves a person before their feet do. She breathed in slowly. Did you love him? He asked softly. Jessica blinked. Who? The man who left you pregnant and alone? No, she said. But I wanted him to love me. I wanted to believe it meant something to him. I ignored the signs. I hoped myself into heartbreak. Michael leaned back against the couch. His voice was low. I know that kind of hope. Lightning flashed outside, followed by a long, distant rumble. Jessica instinctively pulled the blanket tighter over her daughter. Then Michael stood up, walked to the tiny kitchen, and returned with 2 mugs of warm tea. He handed her one, then sat again, this time closer. Their thighs brushed. Neither moved away. Jessica took a sip. Thank you. For staying. Michael looked at her without blinking. I'm not staying out of pity. I didn't think you were. I'm staying because I feel something here. With you. With her. It feels like a second chance I didn't know I needed. Jessica stared at the rising steam from her mug. Her voice was small. Do you believe people get those? I think they do, he said. But they have to choose them. And they have to show up. A gust of wind made the window creak. Jessica shifted, trying to stand, but the baby stirred and she stilled. Her shirt had slipped off one shoulder. She reached to adjust it, fumbling with the strap. Michael caught her hand. Gently. Let me help. His fingers grazed her collarbone as he lifted the fabric back into place. The contact was light but electric. Jessica's breath caught in her throat. She was too tired to flirt, too vulnerable to pretend. And yet, for a split second, the air between them was charged. Michael noticed it too. He met her eyes. You don't have to hide anymore. Jessica didn't speak. She couldn't, because something in his voice made her believe it. Later, as the storm passed and the apartment grew dark, Jessica laid the baby down gently in the bassinet. When she turned, Michael was still sitting on the couch, waiting for her. And in his eyes, warm, steady, unafraid, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. Home. The apartment had finally quieted. Jessica's daughter, full from her feeding, lay swaddled in soft cotton inside the bassinet, breathing deep and slow. The little hiccups from earlier had faded. Jessica stepped into the living room and found Michael exactly where she'd left him, still sitting on the couch, still waiting. There was something comforting in his stillness, like he wasn't there out of obligation, like he had chosen this pause in his life, just to be near hers. She wore one of his shirts now, oversized, soft, warm. He'd left it for her, after discovering all her laundry was in a pile by the bathroom. She hadn't had the strength to fold a thing in days. You look comfortable, he said, smiling. Jessica gave a tired laugh. I forgot how good it feels to wear something that isn't tight or torn. Michael motioned to the spot beside him. Sit. She did, slowly, cautiously, close, and for a moment they just sat like that, shoulder to shoulder, neither speaking, neither needing to. Jessica glanced over, studying his hands. They were big, strong, the kind of hands that could write contracts and cradle a baby in the same day. I've been thinking about her name, she said softly. Michael looked over. Yeah? I want to name her Grace. He let the word linger. It suits her. Jessica nodded. She saved me. She forced me to stop pretending I didn't need help. Michael's voice lowered. She saved me too. Jessica turned her head. Their faces were inches apart now. I was drowning, he said, in boardrooms. Numbers control. But I walked into that hospital room, and something changed. Jessica didn't speak. She couldn't. Michael raised a hand, slowly, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His knuckles grazed her cheek, and neither of them moved away. Jessica's heart pounded in her chest. She wasn't sure if it was because of how close he was, or because of how safe it felt. Michael's voice was barely above a whisper. Can I touch you? Jessica didn't hesitate. Yes. His hand cupped her cheek gently, as though he'd been wanting to but was afraid she might break. His thumb traced along her jawline, barely there, but enough to set her skin on fire. Jessica exhaled, shaky, nervous, wanting. Michael leaned in, slow, patient, but he didn't kiss her. Not yet. Instead, he pressed his forehead against hers. Their breaths mingled. Jessica whispered, "Why are you holding back?" Michael smiled faintly. "Because if I kiss you now, I'm not sure I'll want to stop." Her voice came out in a whisper. "Maybe I don't want you to." But he pulled back. Not in rejection, but in restraint. Michael stood, hands now tucked in his pockets, voice warm but steady. "You've just given life. Your body's still healing. Your heart's been through hell. I want the first time I touch you like that to be when you know it's not just comfort." Jessica blinked at him. "Then what is it?" He stepped forward, leaned down, and kissed the top of her head. "It's respect," he whispered. "It's something I've never felt this deep before." Jessica swallowed hard. Her chest ached, but not from sadness this time. From something deeper, something growing. Later, as she curled beneath the throw blanket, Jessica reached for her phone. She scrolled past old texts, past broken promises, past nights she cried alone. Then she opened a blank message to Michael and typed, "You didn't kiss me tonight, but I felt more loved than I ever have." The 3 dots blinked. Then his reply came. "That's because I want more than a moment, Jess. I want everything." The knock came on a Tuesday. Jessica had just managed to get Grace to sleep. She was curled on the couch in a rare moment of stillness, her body finally remembering what rest felt like. Another knock. Firmer this time. She opened the door slowly, cradling her baby against her chest, and froze. Daniel, the man who had ghosted her the second she said the word pregnant. Now here he was, standing in her doorway like he hadn't vanished, as if he hadn't missed the hospital, the pain, the crying, the fear, the birth. "Jess," he said, trying to smile. "I heard you had the baby. I thought I'd stop by." She tightened her grip around Grace. "From who?" He shrugged. "I got some messages. Doesn't matter." Jessica stepped halfway into the doorway, blocking his view. "You're months too late." Daniel's eyes flicked to the baby. "She mine?" Jessica's voice turned steel. "Now you care?" "I just want to see her. I have a right." A voice spoke from behind her. "She has the right to decide who's safe to be around her child." Michael stepped into view. Calm, grounded. Daniel's posture changed immediately. "And who are you?" Michael didn't flinch. "Someone who's been here since the day she gave birth. Someone who didn't disappear when she needed help." Jessica looked between them, one man full of excuses, the other full of presents. Daniel scoffed. "You think money makes you her baby's dad?" Michael didn't blink. "No. But love might." Jessica asked Daniel to leave, told him they could talk another time. Not now. When the door shut, her hands trembled. She turned to Michael. "He can file for rights. He can take her." Michael stepped closer. "Not without proof. And not if the court sees he's unstable, unprepared." Jessica sat down, breathing hard. "I can't go through another fight." Michael knelt beside her. "You're not going through it alone." She looked at him. "Why does this matter to you? You don't owe me anything." He met her eyes. "I owe myself something. I let my family slip away once. I won't do it again." That night, the air between them felt different. He hadn't kissed her. He hadn't touched her again. But everything he said felt like protection. Jessica stared at him across the room as he washed another bottle at the sink. And in that ordinary moment, his sleeves rolled up, his jaw set with quiet resolve. She realized something. She didn't need a fantasy. She needed a man who showed up, and Michael Torrance had never once left. The next morning, Jessica found Michael at her kitchen table, already on his laptop. His coffee was half gone, sleeves rolled back, hair still damp from a shower he took at the gym down the block. She moved quietly through the living room, swaddling Grace against her chest. "You work early," she murmured. Michael didn't look up. Some battles start before the sun rises. Jessica raised an eyebrow. What battle are we fighting today? He closed the laptop and finally looked at her. Daniel texted you last night. 3 times. Jessica's throat tightened. She hadn't checked her phone. She hadn't wanted to. He wants visitation, Michael said gently. He's already hinted at legal action. Jessica sat down slowly, heart pounding. I can't afford lawyers. I didn't ask you to, Michael said. I've already hired one. Jessica stared at him. Michael, I'm not doing this for charity. Then why? Because your peace matters more than his entitlement. That afternoon, Michael drove them across the city to a quiet, gated neighborhood. Jessica held Grace close, confused. Where are we? She asked. My place, he said. Well, technically the guest house. Jessica blinked. You want us to live here? Not forever. Just until you're safe. Until Grace is legally protected. Until he can't use fear to get what he wants. Jessica stepped into the guest house and nearly dropped to her knees. It wasn't extravagant, but it was clean, bright, stocked with formula, diapers, new clothes, a bassinet by the window. She turned slowly. You did all this? Michael shrugged, suddenly sheepish. I didn't want to assume. But I hoped. Jessica's voice cracked. You hoped that you'd let me stand beside you, not as your boss. He paused. As something else. Living in the guest house changed everything. Michael worked from the main house most days, but came over every morning with breakfast. He carried Grace like she was made of gold. He never forgot a bottle, never flinched at a diaper. Jessica found herself smiling more, sleeping better, laughing in a way she hadn't since before the pregnancy. One night, after feeding Grace, she stepped into the kitchen and saw Michael standing shirtless at the sink, washing bottles. The muscles in his back flexed under soft light. A few water droplets trailed down his spine. He turned. Their eyes locked. Neither of them moved. Then Michael dried his hands, walked over, and brushed a curl behind her ear. Why do you look at me like that? She whispered. Because I can't believe I almost lived my whole life without meeting you. It was close to midnight. Grace had finally fallen asleep after an hour of soft rocking and lullabies that Jessica barely remembered the words to. The house was still, so quiet, even the refrigerator hum seemed respectful. Jessica padded into the living room, Michael seated on the couch with his tie loose and the top button of his shirt undone. He'd just finished a late Zoom call with one of his overseas partners, but his eyes, though tired, lit up the moment he saw her. Is she asleep? Jessica nodded. Out cold. Michael smiled. You did good. Jessica sank into the couch beside him, drawing her knees up beneath her. She wore soft cotton shorts and a worn sleep tee, and for the first time, in days, she didn't feel like she had to apologize for how she looked. I wasn't always like this, she said suddenly. Michael tilted his head. Like what? Weighed down, fragile, quiet. She looked down at her hands. I used to be fearless. Before the pregnancy. Before the fear. Before being left. Michael leaned forward, elbows on his knees. His voice was low. You're stronger now. Jessica let out a breath. I feel broken. You're not broken, he said. You're rebuilding, and I'd choose that version of you. Every time. There was a long silence. Comfortable. Jessica looked over. His hands were resting between his knees, fingers laced together as if trying to contain something. She reached for them slowly, then laced her fingers through his. His grip tightened. Warm. Steady. I didn't expect you, she whispered. I didn't expect you, he replied. Jessica let her head rest gently on his shoulder. The warmth of his body against hers was calming. Michael didn't move for a long moment. Then, softly, Jess. She turned her face toward him. He kissed her forehead first. Just a brush, a promise. Then, he tilted her chin gently. Waited. Let her choose. She did. Their lips met. Soft, slow, exploratory. Not rushed, not hungry, but deep. Like they were exhaling the fear and grief they'd both carried alone. Like they had waited their whole lives to finally kiss someone who didn't need fixing, just holding. When they pulled apart, Jessica's eyes glistened. Michael smiled, still close. Was that okay? Jessica nodded. I've never been kissed like that. He whispered. That's because no one saw you like I do. They didn't go further, not yet. But when he tucked her against his chest and she fell asleep in his arms, neither of them dreamed of anything else. Because real love doesn't always begin with fire. Sometimes it starts with quiet. If that moment touched your heart even a little, let us know in the comments. Have you ever experienced a love that started quietly but changed everything? Tell us below. And if you believe that love isn't always loud, but real love shows up, please like this video and hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter, right here on Mr Hearthline Stories. Jessica stood in front of the mirror the next morning, holding her shirt in one hand and doubt in the other. The faint scar beneath her belly, the stretch marks tracing her sides, the soreness in her chest. Her body didn't feel like it belonged to her anymore. It felt borrowed, rearranged. She heard the soft knock behind her. Coffee's ready, Michael called through the guest house door. Jessica quickly tugged on a sweatshirt, hiding the shirt she'd planned to wear. She walked into the kitchen with Grace in her arms. Michael smiled when he saw them, but his gaze lingered on her face longer than usual. You okay? He asked. Jessica forced a smile. Just tired. Michael handed her a mug and brushed her hand gently as he did. You were quiet this morning. Jessica hesitated. Then, can I ask you something personal? Anything. What do you see when you look at me now? Michael set his mug down. His eyes didn't waver. I see a woman who gave life, who fought through pain and fear and still showed up. I see someone stronger than anyone in any boardroom I've ever sat in. Jessica looked away. I don't feel beautiful. Michael took a slow step toward her. You don't have to feel it yet. I'll carry that belief for both of us, until you see what I see. Later that day, Jessica dozed off while Grace napped. The soft hum of the TV in the background played scenes from an old romantic movie. She woke to the sound of clinking dishes. Michael was shirtless again, rinsing a pot in the sink, dish towel tossed over his shoulder. His jeans sat low on his waist, hair messy, expression focused. Jessica sat silently, just watching. The way he moved, the care he gave to even the smallest tasks. He turned and caught her watching. A beat of silence passed. Then he said gently, "Come here." Jessica stood slowly, walking toward him, pulse racing. He reached for her hand, then guided it to rest on his chest. "You don't have to say a word," he said, "but if you ever doubt how I feel about you, remember this moment. Right here." Jessica's fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt. "I'm scared to let you want me," she whispered. Michael leaned in, nose brushing hers. "Then let me show you." Slowly, as slow as you need, he kissed her again. But this time, it wasn't just gentle. It was reverent, deliberate. Jessica melted into him, not from pressure, but from trust. From months of watching this man carry her in silence, now asking nothing, yet offering everything. Her sweatshirt slipped off her shoulder. Michael paused. She held her breath. He didn't rush, didn't comment. He just kissed the scar below her collarbone and whispered, "You are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." The rain had returned by nightfall, soft, steady, like a slow heartbeat echoing against the windows. The guest house lights were dim. Grace was asleep, her tiny breaths rising and falling like clockwork in the bassinet by the wall. Jessica stood at the edge of the bed, her heart louder than the rain. She wore nothing fancy, just one of Michael's clean button-down shirts, unbuttoned at the top, brushing the tops of her thighs. Her hair was down, bare feet on cool hardwood. Michael stepped out of the bathroom in a plain white t-shirt and dark lounge pants. His eyes found her in the low light, and everything in him paused. "You sure?" he asked, voice soft, careful. Jessica nodded. "I need to stop being afraid of being seen." Michael closed the distance slowly. "Then let me see you, all of you, and let me show you what it looks like to be wanted, not used." He kissed her, like she was made of memory and miracle. Not hurried, not greedy, but like every part of her deserved to be known. Jessica's hands trembled as she reached for the hem of her shirt. He stopped her gently. "You don't have to rush. Let me—" He undressed her the way a man unwraps something sacred, not fragile, but rare. When she stood bare before him, her shoulders tensed. Michael stepped in, pressed his forehead to hers. His fingers ran gently over the lines across her stomach, the stretch of her hips, the soft skin of her thighs. "These aren't flaws," he said. "These are proofs that you survived, that you gave life. There is nothing here I don't want to kiss." And then he did. Every line, every inch. They made love slowly. Jessica didn't hide. Michael didn't ask her to perform, didn't pull her into poses or chase perfection. He stayed connected, whispered her name, held her like the world stopped turning if she let go. And when she cried, not from pain but from release, he kissed every tear. Afterward, they lay tangled in sheets that smelled like vanilla and fresh air. Grace stirred once, but didn't wake. Jessica curled into his chest, bare skin against bare skin. Michael stroked her spine slowly, his voice a hush. "You're safe here." Jessica whispered, "I don't think I've ever made love before." "Not really." Michael kissed the crown of her head. "Then let this be your first memory." The peace didn't last long. 2 days later, a thick white envelope arrived, dropped off by courier. Jessica opened it with trembling fingers and read the words that made her knees go weak. Petition for paternal rights and joint custody. Michael stood behind her, reading over her shoulder in silence. Daniel was taking her to court, and he was serious. Jessica sat at the kitchen table, head in her hands. "He's trying to take her from me. I knew this would happen." Michael stayed calm, but his jaw was tight. "He's not taking her. Not if I have anything to say about it." "I can't go through this again, Michael. Courtrooms, lawyers, all of it. You're not going alone." Jessica looked up, her voice raw. "Why are you still here?" Michael leaned down and gently took her hands. "Because you matter to me. Grace matters to me. And I'm not the kind of man who walks away when it gets hard." The hearing was scheduled fast. Daniel had hired a slick attorney and showed up in a suit that didn't fit him. He sat in the courtroom like a man who thought this was just paperwork. Jessica stood in front of the judge, nervous, her lawyer beside her. Michael sat in the gallery wearing a tailored navy suit, his posture calm, eyes locked on her. She could feel his presence like armor. The courtroom hushed when her lawyer began to speak. "Your Honor, this is not a case of a father being denied access. This is a case of a man who vanished during pregnancy, never showed at the hospital, and only returned once he believed he could take control." Daniel's lawyer objected. The judge allowed the statement. Then came Daniel's turn. "I deserve to know my child," he said stiffly. "I made mistakes, but I'm here now." Jessica's heart burned. But she didn't speak out of anger. She spoke from truth. "I begged you to come when I was in labor," she told him. "You blocked my number. I delivered her alone. And now you think showing up late means you can take her from me?" Her voice cracked. "She already has a father. He held her before you ever did. He fed her, protected her, never asked for anything. He just showed up." The courtroom was silent. Jessica didn't have to name Michael. Everyone already knew who she meant. That night, back at the guest house, Jessica sat in Michael's lap by the fireplace. Her voice was soft. "You didn't say a word in court." "I didn't need to." She looked up at him. "You've done more by being quiet than he ever did by talking." Michael kissed her forehead. "You don't have to fight alone anymore. Not ever." The courtroom ruling came a week later. The judge's voice was flat but final. Shared custody granted on a conditional basis, pending formal assessment of the father's fitness and willingness to support. Jessica didn't cry, not in court, not in front of Daniel. But when she stepped outside, baby Grace tucked close to her chest, she felt the weight press against her chest like a brick. "He still gets time with her," she said to Michael, her voice hollow. Michael didn't try to comfort her with empty promises. Instead, He reached out and gently took her hand. That doesn't make him a father, Jess. It makes him a name on paper. Jessica's voice cracked. What makes you one? Michael's grip tightened. Every 3 a.m. bottle, every diaper. Every time I looked into her eyes and saw you. She blinked hard, trying to hold herself together. I don't want her to grow up confused. I don't want to share her with someone who showed up only when it was convenient. You won't, Michael said, because what he can't give her is a home and a heart. They drove back to the guest house in silence. Grace slept in the back seat, clutching a soft giraffe toy Michael had brought home the week before. Jessica stared out the window, the city passing by like a memory she no longer lived in. I used to think I could do this alone, she said softly. But now, I don't want to. Michael glanced at her. You don't have to. Jessica turned to him. Do you think there's a world where this, us, makes sense to anyone? I don't care if it does, he replied. It makes sense to me. That's enough. That night, Michael returned from a meeting to find Jessica in the nursery, rocking Grace gently beneath a mobile of stars. She didn't hear him come in. She was humming, slow and sweet, a lullaby he didn't recognize. He stood there, watching her. Then Jessica looked over and smiled. I think she knows your voice more than anyone's, she said. When she hears you come in, she calms down. Michael stepped closer. That's because she knows who's staying. Jessica didn't move. She looked at him, eyes wide. Then stay, Michael's breath caught. Jess, she shook her head. Not just tonight. Not just through this season. I mean stay. Be hers. Be mine. Michael crossed the room, placed his hand gently on the baby's back. I already am. The morning sun crept through gauzy curtains as Jessica stepped into the kitchen, hair loose, Grace perched on her hip in a soft sling. Michael was already there, barefoot in sweatpants, flipping pancakes with a confidence he had no right to have. Morning, ladies, he said with a sleepy smile. Jessica smirked. You cook now. I'm trying, but the pancake looks more like Ohio than a circle. Grace squealed and reached for him. Michael took her immediately, cradling her like it was second nature. Jessica leaned against the doorframe and watched them, this quiet, unplanned life forming its own rhythm. She never thought she'd be the woman who felt safe in the silence of another person's morning. But here she was. Later that day, they took Grace to the park. The leaves were beginning to turn. Jessica sat on a picnic blanket, while Michael paced nearby, holding Grace up to the sky like she was a sunbeam that belonged to him. When he returned, he sat beside Jessica, unusually quiet. What's on your mind? She asked. Michael reached into the pocket of his jacket, pulled out a small black box. Jessica's breath caught. He didn't open it right away. Instead, he turned toward her and spoke slowly. I've spent most of my life building things, companies, brands, legacies, but nothing I've built has ever felt like home. He looked down at Grace. Until I got that accidental text. Until I walked into that hospital room and saw you. Jessica's eyes were already wet. Michael opened the box. No grand speech. No crowd. Just a quiet truth. I don't want to be the man who shows up only when it's hard. I want to be the man who's there for every ordinary moment, every diaper, every dance recital, every day you feel unsure. He paused. Marry me, Jessica. Let's stop surviving. Let's live. Together. Jessica stared at the ring, then at the man holding it, and finally down at her daughter, wide-eyed, drooling, innocent. She smiled. Tears slid down her face as she whispered, yes. That night, Jessica placed the ring box gently on the nightstand. Michael curled behind her, one hand around her waist, the other resting lightly on Grace's bassinet beside the bed. Everything was quiet. But this time, not because it was empty, because it was full. The backyard wedding was small, just 20 people, folding chairs under a white linen canopy and a handmade arch that Michael's sister insisted on decorating herself. Jessica stood barefoot in the grass, Grace resting in her arms, wrapped in the same blanket Michael had bought that first week. There was no orchestra, no fanfare, just quiet vows between two people who had been through enough to know what love really was. Jessica looked into Michael's eyes and spoke without a script. "I didn't fall for you because of what you did for me. I fell for you because of what you never let me carry alone." Michael's voice trembled as he replied, "You didn't break, Jess. You bloomed. And you brought me with you." When they kissed, Grace gurgled happily in Jessica's arms, like she understood she now belonged to both of them. Months later, Michael sat in the rocking chair, holding Grace against his chest. Jessica stood in the hallway, watching from the shadows. He was reading aloud, voice soft and steady. And when the sun came up, they didn't just have a new day, they had a new beginning. Grace yawned and nestled closer. Jessica walked in slowly, slid her arms around his shoulders from behind, and kissed his temple. "I didn't know a mistake could lead to this much joy," she whispered. Michael smiled. "It wasn't a mistake, it was a message. And I heard it loud and clear. If this story moved you, if you believe that love sometimes finds us at our lowest and lifts us higher than we dreamed, then don't scroll away. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Jessica's shoes? Share this with someone who still believes in second chances. And if you're new here, hit subscribe and turn on the bell, so you never miss a moment from Mr Hearthline Stories. From our heart to yours, thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next story.